Hello everyone. In this session, I'm going to go over a very elegant solution of providing your users ability to SSH into EC2 instances. In AWS, there are multiple ways to allow users to SSH into private instances as well as public instances, but my focus here is private instances. And one of the most traditional approach is to via the bastion instance, and users SSH into your private instances through that bastion instance. This approach is basically just a nightmare. It's difficult to manage and maintain and takes significant effort. So you have to open and manage ports, specify the specific IP addresses that can access, and also you need to manage the keys. I'm not going to go over the other solutions AWS in this video. The one that I'm going to talk about is, according to me, it's the best solution to provide SSH access to the instances, and also the most easiest way to have the ability to log all activity by all users on the EC2 instances, which is critical for any production scenario. This approach uses Session Manager, which is a Systems Manager capability, and it allows you to SSH into EC2 instances. Also, this is a very scalable solution because you can set up the solution for all the instances in your entire account. Moreover, you also have the option to set this up one time for all the instances in all the regions in all your AWS accounts under the same organization. You are able to centrally control access to all the instances using IAM policies. You don't need to open any ports. You don't need to manage any bastion instances or SSH keys. Users can log in to the instances through just a click from the AWS console, and they can also use the AWS CLI to log in. You can also enable port forwarding using this, but this part I'm not gonna go in this video. Maybe I'll do another video for port forwarding. And as I mentioned, you get full session logging into Cloudwatch and S3, thus you get full auditability, and anytime you can check who did what. First, we are going to launch an EC2 instance. We're going to call it instance 1. We will go with the Amazon Linux AMI. This does have the SSM agent installed in it. We are not going to select any key pair. This is one of the advantages of using the session manager, that we don't need to manage any key pairs. All of that is done for us. I'm going to select a private subnet just to emphasize how isolated this instance is. And I'm going to create a new security group, but I'm not gonna add any inbound rules. That is another of the great advantages of using the session manager, that we don't need to open any ports and manage any security group rules. We are ready to launch the instance, so we're gonna launch it and give it a few minutes to come up. The instance is up. And right now, if we try to connect to it using the session manager, we would not be able to do so. Once we set up the session manager on this instance, then we would be able to connect from here. Now, in order to enable login through the session manager, the most important concept to understand is that we need to associate a specific set of permissions to this instance. Those permissions allow the systems manager to manage this instance, and it gives this EC2 instance some permissions that allows it to make calls to this systems manager. Now there is an Amazon provided policy that we can associate with the role that we are going to create for this instance. That policy is called Amazon SSM Managed Instance Core. And if we just add it to the role for this instance, we are going to be providing all the permissions required for this instance to be managed by SSM, and also for us to be able to use the session manager to log into the instance. So I am going to go to security, modify IAM role. I'm going to create a new IAM role. The use case is an EC2 instance making AWS API calls. And here I'm going to specify the policy that Amazon provides to us for this specific purpose. This one, Amazon SSM Managed Instance Core. So we're going to give it a descriptive name. And it has not been assigned to the instance yet. So now we're going to assign the role that we just created to this instance. Now it will take few minutes to show up, to register itself to SSM and then show up as an SSM managed instance. For now, we will just quickly check if we have the ability to log in. We don't right now, but let's wait for a few minutes and this will start working. There are various ways we can check this. One way is to go to the fleet manager and then get started, and then all instances being managed by SSM are going to show up here. Okay, so it took about 20 minutes and now this instance got registered with SSM and it's showing in our fleet manager. What this also means is we should now be able to log in using the session manager. So go to connect. This button is now enabled. I click connect and I'm connected. Okay, so that's the first thing that I wanted to show. Next, I'm going to show how we can enable logging so that anyone who logs in to any instance and any commands, all the commands that they're going to run, they would get logged and we can do an audit whenever required. To enable logging for all of our session manager sessions, we need to go to the Systems Manager, and then from there, under Node Management, we will go to Session Manager. And within Session Manager, there is a tab for Preferences. And here, as you can see, there is a section for Cloudwatch logging, as well as S3 logging. Right now, we're just going to configure S3 Cloudwatch logging, but this is where you are going to configure S3 logging as well. So enable. And then here we need to select a log group. We don't have a log group, and here the UI is not that great actually. They don't provide the ability to create a log group from right here. So we would have to create a log group ourselves. We call it Sessions Manager. And just confirming it's there. So we'll go back, and here you are supposed to enter the log group name yourself, no autocomplete. So you're pretty much on your own. And then we will do save. Just want to make sure the settings took effect. Yes. This is the log group that we just created. Now, in order for session logging to work, there is one more thing we need to do. We need to assign the role attached to the instance, the permissions to push logs to Cloudwatch. So you have a session manager agent running on the instance. That agent would be pushing the commands to Cloudwatch. So that instance need to be granted permissions to do that. So for that, we will go to the instance. And then from there, we will go to the role that is assigned to the instance. It's this role that we just created. And here we are going to add the permissions. I have the policy saved and tested in another window. So that's why I'm going to select JSON and just copy paste. So full disclaimer. So here we are assigning certain permissions, including the ability to put log events to the specific log group. And then we are also assigning the permission to be able to describe all log groups. Okay, so I'm just going to call it Cloudwatch logs because it's an inline policy and associated with this role. I don't need to add any more context in the name. All right, we're gonna give few seconds for IAM permissions to propagate. If you don't know this, IAM does take few seconds to propagate the permissions. And now we will go to the instance, then connect and run some commands. So we can do echo. Now let's go to the home directory. Yes, and then we can do test data.txt. And let's also simulate someone logged in as root and deleted this file from SSM users directory. So this file is not there anymore. And let's go to Cloudwatch now and see if these commands got logged. So this is the log group that we configured. We can already see this log stream that got created for this session. And here we can see all the commands that we executed. So where is the RM as root? Here it is. Yes. So with this, any user that is provided SSM Session Manager access, all the commands they're going to run on any of the instances, they would get logged to Cloudwatch. And you can always come here and review the logs and search them. There is an obvious problem with this approach. That is, For each instance that is launched within the account, you need to go and either associate the role that we created to the instance or attach the SSM manage instance core policy as well as the permission for Cloudwatch to in the instance existing role. As we can already see that this is not scalable at all. So how do we make our solution scalable? For that, the answer is default host monitoring option that we can set from the fleet manager. So let's go to the fleet manager and quickly set up default host monitoring and make this solution scalable. So in the search box, let's enter fleet manager and then select this option, configure default host management. We don't have it configured, so that's why it's showing up here. Otherwise, it's always accessible from here. And these are all the things which this configuration would do. Among these things, what is also included is this. We're going to enable it. We're going to select the default IAM role, which is the recommended approach. By the way, that role is not going to show up from the ec2 console because under the hood, that's what SSM agent would be using. So now that default host monitoring is enabled, let's go to the ec2 console and launch another instance. Instance 2, Amazon Linux. No key pair, we don't need them. We're gonna use the existing security group that we created. I forgot what it was. Let's quickly check. No, here. It'll show up under security. Should have given it a better name. Launch Wizard 6. So not a very descriptive name. That's why I had to go through this. And it's currently in one of the public subnets. So I'm going to select private subnet. And I'm not assigning the role to this myself. It could take up to 30 minutes for default host monitoring to be enabled. So we'll see if it got enabled or we have to wait for a few minutes, and hopefully it's not 30 minutes. Yes. So as you can see, this instance 2, let me go back. So instance 2, I didn't explicitly attach any role to it, but I would still be able to connect to the instance. And that is because of default host monitoring that we just set up in few clicks. Here I am logged in. I'm gonna say now let's go back to Cloudwatch and see if anything got created. This is the old log stream, so no additional logs were pushed to the log group, and that is because the role that we have associated with the instance in default host monitoring, this one doesn't have Cloudwatch logs access. So same problem as with the earlier setup, we had to provide Cloudwatch logs access to the role. So now we need to do the same to this role, because this is the role which the SSM agent would be using. So let's go to roles and find this role and add the Cloudwatch permission and see if it changes anything. I'm gonna terminate this session and I'm gonna start a new session after adding the permissions. We're just gonna select JSON like last time. Thanks to copy and paste, we can quickly create the policy. Okay, so give few seconds for IAM changes to propagate. Now let's go back to the instance 2 and connect. And then I'm gonna print out the same message. No, it's almost the same message. Let's go to the log group and see if we got anything. Yes, we did. This is the new log stream. And when you're gonna go and view the logs, you should see the command that we just executed. Here it is. Okay. So thanks to default host monitoring, we were able to set up the session manager for all instances that are currently running and would be launched in future for the entire account. But if you use AWS in a production scenario, there is high probability now that you are using multiple accounts using AWS organizations. So we have a similar problem in this case and that is that this solution is not scaling to the multi-account scenario. So how do we enable this for all the accounts within an organization? Once again, thanks to Systems Manager functionality, it's just gonna take a few clicks to set this up. And that functionality is the quick setup. And let's see how that works. Now I am in the management account. This specific quick setup only shows up in the management account. So within the management account and the fleet manager, go to account management and select this link with regards to quick setup. And then here, if you search for hosts, you're gonna see these two for this our specific needs, which is to enable default host management configuration. This is the option that we're gonna select. I'm not gonna do it, but in order to set it up, you just to click create. And once you create it, it's gonna take some time to deploy the configuration to all your accounts in all the regions. And after that, your Default host monitoring, including the ability to log in using the session manager, would be set up for all instances, in all accounts, in all regions. Now, this is a scalable and complete solution that we can use and rely on.